Okay, so as many of you guys know, I've been kind of obsessed with the Karen Reed trial, and I watch a lot of commentary, having to do with it, and I happened to just come across this guy's videos, which I've watched a few of his videos before. His name's Profiling Evil. I think he's like some type of cop or of some sort, okay? And he makes this video, and in the video, he is basically claiming that what the prosecution is laying out is possible. But the problem here is that the information he's basing his opinion off of is not even the right information. So let's take a listen to what he says, and then I'll show you what really is going on here.
Walking, again, I believe, toward that driveway to the north. Reed pulled away, and that would have put O'Keefe somewhere near the back of the vehicle, which would have been, again, on his right side as it pulled away. Then, according to the statements, Reed initiates a three-point turn to head back north on Fairview Road. Now, in this video, I'm trying to kind of show in a very rough way that Reed's driving her SUV southbound, so she's approaching from the north, driving southbound to 34 Fairview. As she pulls to a stop, O'Keefe exits the vehicle eastward from the vehicle between the curb and the vehicle to go into the home. Reed then starts to pull away and initiates a three-point turn to head back to the north on Fairview Road. In doing so, the evidence is pointing that she reversed the vehicle at a high rate of speed, and that's likely where the injuries occurred. Now, the prosecution is opining that the SUV slammed into O'Keefe's right side. That makes sense if he's walking between the curb and the vehicle when he exited to the north to go in the driveway. The impact likely knocked him backwards, with his head smashing violently onto the icy pavement, or perhaps the undercarriage of the vehicle.
Okay, so you saw his little animation there, but here's the problem. Later on in this clip, he plays this little news report, which I'm going to play for you.
At that house in Canton for an after-hours party, but then she left without him. The next morning, O'Keefe's body was found lying in a snowbank near a fire hydrant in the front corner of the yard. Prosecutors say as Reed drove away, she slammed her SUV into O'Keefe, going more than 24 miles an hour, leaving him for dead in a blizzard.
Okay, so now I need somebody to explain to me how on earth it's possible for her to accelerate from 0 to 24 miles an hour doing a three-point turn in the middle of a street. I mean, how wide is Fairview Road? I would imagine it's probably about 30 feet wide. And if that's the case, well, that's a problem because you have to account for the length of her SUV, which is 197 inches from front to back, making it around 16 feet in length. How on earth was she able to accelerate from 0 to 24 miles an hour without ending up somewhere on the Albert's front lawn? If in fact she was in the middle of a three-point turn, which isn't the prosecution's theory. So if we listen to Adam Lally and what he said in the first trial, this is his statement from his opening statements.
So there is some data that he's able to recover from that and back the vehicle up based on its known locations and travel. He cycles and essentially opines, he'll opine that around 12:45 in the morning when the vehicle was in front of the residence on Fairview, that for some perceptible period of time, that vehicle travels over 60 feet in reverse at over approximately 24.2 miles per hour.
Now, that's interesting because the average two-lane residential street in the U.S. is about 24 feet wide. So she obviously wasn't doing a three-point turn because that would put her somewhere on the Albert's lawn if she went 60 feet or possibly in their living room. Now, here is the prosecution's or Commonwealth's theory from the second trial that is going on right now.
2022, when the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe were in front of 34 Fairview Road, all the way to the left side in a dark corner near a flagpole, you will learn that Mr. O'Keefe got out of the car. He got out and he stood by the side of the road after an argument with the defendant. That argument, that anger fueled by heavy intoxication, you will learn from the science and data as he stood by the side of the road, the defendant in her SUV drove away. She drove at least 35 feet away. The argument was over. It had ended. But then she stopped. She stopped, she put the Lexus into neutral, and she waited 2 minutes. And the facts and the science and data will tell you that despite the fact the argument was over, she then put the Lexus into reverse, put her foot on the gas pedal, and began to press, not 25%, not 50%, up to 75% acceleration. There was a light dusting of snow, the Lexus tire spun backwards, she went backwards at least 70 feet.
So let me get this straight. She pulled up 35 feet and then she backed up 70 feet. That would put her way past John O'Keefe. And don't forget, Higgins' Jeep was parked right in front of the mailbox. And if she backed up 70 feet from 35 feet, she definitely would have creamed his Jeep. I mean, that is some maneuvering that she was able to do in the snow, in reverse, while drunk. Somehow she was able to do all of this and not hit his Jeep.
She clipped John O'Keefe. He fell backwards, hit his head, broke his skull. And there he lay at the corner of Fairview Road, on the ground, lying on top of his cell phone, alone.
So, again, what's shown in this clip, it is impossible to have occurred what he's saying occurred. How do you go 60 feet across an approximately 24-foot road in reverse, 24 miles an hour, the way that it's being shown here in Profiling Evil's video? It just doesn't even make sense. Even if she was going diagonally across the street, it still doesn't make sense. Hank Brennan is claiming that she went approximately 35 feet in one direction and then backed up over 70 feet in another direction. That would put her car somewhere on the Alberts front lawn if she was doing a 3-point turn, or quite possibly in their living room. So that doesn't make sense. And that's not even the prosecution's theory in either of the trials. Their theory is that she pulled forward and then she backed up. And I believe a 3-point turn might have occurred, but it was prior to them arriving at 34 Fairview. Your whole entire theory is based off of incorrect information. And my biggest question in all of this is, if Karen pulled forward 35 feet, what was John doing during that whole time? Was he just standing there watching her? I mean, they're saying that she pulled forward 35 feet, put the car in neutral, I guess sat there for a few seconds. So I guess John was just standing in the street. I don't know what he was doing, possibly looking at her car. I don't know. And then all of a sudden she, just floored it, 75% acceleration, backed into him, and he just stood there, right, watching her and waiting for her to hit him on the side of the road. That doesn't make much sense. So what Profiling Evil is saying in this video is absolutely incorrect, because in the first trial, when Trooper Paul, who was a complete and utter idiot, was on the stand doing his direct, he was basically showing these charts, and in these charts, he shows the two different times where she did the 3-point turn, which occurred prior to them arriving at 34 Fairview. And then the event where John was hit shows that she just went forward and then came back. So without showing you the whole thing and boring you to death with Adam Lally's boring questioning, this was the first chart that was shown in the courtroom, and this is where the 3-point turn occurred. So that was one event.
Data. Do you have any opinion as to sort of what type of maneuver or what type of actions the vehicle was taking during the course of this triggering event?
Yes, this appears the vehicle was slowing down and making a U-turn. Because also the other thing into it, it shows steering signal. And the steering wheel showed that she was trying left and then right and the back left again. And also when she's on the brake switch.
This was later debated in cross-examination by Alan Jackson, because he used the term U-turn, and a U-turn would really just mean you literally just turned around, and a 3-point turn is one where you go forward, you stop the car, you go in reverse, and it requires more steps. And so there was a little bit of an argument about that, and eventually they agreed that it was a 3-point turn and not a U-turn. And the next data set that they showed, the next chart, which was a completely separate event, was the event where supposedly John was hit by the vehicle. And again, I don't want to bore you with Adam Lally's questioning, so here's the conclusion.
Now, with regard to this data from 12629 miles B, what, if anything, are you able to tell from this data as far as when that occurred in relation to 12629A?
So they occurred about approximately 8 minutes. So 1269A occurred 8 minutes prior to the other one, and they both occurred within on the same odometer mileage.
And so what he's referencing here is the two separate events, the 3-point turn and the event where Karen, drove forward 30 feet, went into neutral, and then backed up, going 24 miles an hour with small deviations in her steering. And so there was 8 minutes between each of those events. And so therefore the 3-point turn occurred 8 minutes prior to John O'Keefe being hit. But the other problem, in which I'm not going to get into, is the key cycles. And it ended up in the last trial, it was proven that Trooper Paul here counted the key cycles wrong. And the event that he was actually counting as Karen backing up and hitting John was really her car being backed into the tow truck or onto the tow truck. But you could go watch that. It's a whole big long breakdown in his cross-examination. Anyway, going back to Profiling Evil's video here, even the way he says that John got hit and, got hurt and his injuries doesn't line up with what Trooper Paul said.
Exits the vehicle eastward from the vehicle between the curb and the vehicle to go into the home. Reed then starts to pull away and initiates a 3-point turn to head back to the north on Fairview Road. In doing so, the evidence is pointing that she reversed the vehicle at a high rate of speed, and that's likely where the injuries occurred. Now, the prosecution is opining that the SUV slammed into O'Keefe's right side. That makes sense if he's walking between the curb and the vehicle when he exited to the north to go in the driveway. The impact likely knocked him backwards, with his head smashing violently onto the icy pavement, or perhaps the undercarriage of the vehicle.
And what he's saying here makes no sense, because this means that John's back would have been facing the car and his face would have been facing the house, right? So he would have been going towards the house. And how would he get hit in the back and then fall backwards and hit the back of his head? That doesn't make any sense, because that's where the injury is. It's on the very back of his head. And you'll hear in a moment that he starts saying something about the undercarriage of the car, but that is not what the prosecution's theory is. She didn't run him over, and he didn't make any contact with the undercarriage of the car. In fact, we'll take a look at what they said happened, and it is nothing even close to what he's saying happened.
But here's the thing. All of that damage was on the right side of John's body. And that's important because if O'Keefe had been walking behind the SUV with his right side closest to the vehicle, and Reed did in fact back up suddenly and hit him, it would have squarely been on the right-hand side. And that impact could have knocked him down incredibly hard, could have caused his head to slam onto the icy pavement, or it could have caused him to go under the vehicle and have damage from there. But we also know that he hit the tail light because there's glass fragments. Whether you agree with that or not, there are broken glass fragments, not only from a drinking glass, but from the tail light on the back right side. That kind of fall, twisting, and spinning would explain everything that Dr. Stonebridge saw.
And I would love this guy to explain the lack of bruising. Quick story, when I was younger, I was in the car with someone who struck a pedestrian, and the girl jumped out into the middle of the street, and her arm hit the mirror of the car, and it took the mirror of the car straight off the car. And we basically sideswiped her, which is exactly what they're saying happened in this case, as you'll see in a minute. And anyway, she kind of spun around and then kind of rolled down the street after, we had passed her. And when we got out of the car, she came up to us, and sure enough, her arm was broken. And that was just from the mirror hitting her arm. So you could imagine what the tail light that's on the body of the car, where the, center of gravity basically is, would do to somebody's arm. Sorry, but the fact that there's no broken bones or even bruises is a little strange to me. But John was not under the car at any time, so I don't know why he's even talking about the undercarriage of the car. And he gets a little further into the scratches and keeps talking about the undercarriage of the car, but that's not part of the prosecution's theory at all.
Now, the doctor's findings matched Dr. Stonebridge's in another critical way. The injuries were mostly on his right side. The outside part of the arm, the part that everybody is saying was dog bites. The inside of the arm, we're not seeing pictures of. I hope we see more, but I don't see anything there that shows problems. These are the kind of injuries you get when one side of your body hits something hard or is drug underneath a car or some other thing.
But again, there's no indication he was drugged by the car.
Now, if you're walking behind a car and it suddenly slams into you, these are the kind of spots that get hurt. But this is where the defense's dog theory, in my opinion, starts to fall apart. There was a large German Shepherd reportedly in the house that night, and some people believe that it might have attacked O'Keefe. I listened to a dog expert for the defense suggest that the wounds look like bite marks to him, but they sure don't to me.
Okay, and so here is the Commonwealth's expert, accident reconstructionist, Trooper Paul, explaining how these scratches occurred and how everything happened.
Opinion as to how Mr. O'Keefe interacted with the defendant's vehicle.
So when you look at the damage, he would have interacted with that left side of the vehicle. And when he got struck by the vehicle on the left side, it would have caused his vehicle to rotate kind of counterclockwise. And then when that rotation, he could turn it into his back, and his back could have struck the ground. I noted at the scene that there was asphalt curbing, which could have, somewhere he could have struck his head in there, or somewhere along any of the pavement would have caused damage. Most forward projection crashes have damage on both sides of the body.
Why is that?
Due to them get projected forward, so they get hit from behind, they would have damage to the back, and then when they get projected forward, they get damage to the front. So, in this case, he got projected and got spun counterclockwise due to where he got impacted the vehicle.
This guy must have been a nightmare for the poor court reporter that had to report, all these words that he was saying wrong. But anyway, on cross-examination, it kind of got explained a little better.
Based on what I saw for his injuries was from the upper part of his arm down.
Was his arm out? And it just struck the arm like a hinge? Was it in front of him? You did the reconstruction? It shows exactly how his body was positioned when he was struck by that.
So it looks like his arm was more kind of like this, if I can try to get that.
You're indicating out by his side, correct?
Yes.
All right. And the taillight would have struck his arm, right?
Yes.
Not his torso.
Yes.
Okay. So the full mass, the full weight of that truck hit him basically at the elbow. Is that right? Missing his torso.
Oh, I said it. From upper part of the arm down.
The elbow and the biceps.
I didn't see anything that shows an indication that this lower torso was struck, but
okay. So
it's not saying it could not have been a possibility, but I just didn't see anything.
So his torso was spared from being hit, but the arm took the brunt, the full force of the vehicle, correct?
Like arm and shoulder, yes.
Okay. And you said he then did a spin, like a sort of a pirouette?
He got spun around possibly the way he struck, it looked like he could have turned around counterclockwise.
Okay. So if he turns around counterclockwise, is he turning around in the air counterclockwise?
Yes, initially.
So he gets hit on the upper biceps, shoulder area, and down to the forearm, right?
Yes.
By an unbroken taillight, right?
Yes.
In other words, it's nice and smooth. Nothing, no shards of plastic or anything broken at the time that it made contact with his arm, right?
Correct.
Okay, so how did his arm get all cut up?
Because when his arm struck the tail light then cracked.
I just have to pause this and say that this guy's face says everything.
And as the car is driving past him, the taillight could scratch it.
Got it. So he gets hit by the car, not his torso, just the arm. The taillight cracks, and as it passes by, his arm stays with it long enough to get striations, those scratches that we see, those lacerations, those abrasions that we see, right?
In a sense, yes.
And at the same time, he does a pirouette and flies 30 feet to his final point of rest.
I don't know if he did a pirouette.
Well, I'm using the word pirouette. He spun around.
He started rotating counterclockwise. I don't know how far he ran counterclockwise, but he started rotating. According to that, would push him to rotate counterclockwise. Whether or not he went counterclockwise all the way to his back toward the ground, it seems like a most likely possibility.
Got it. Did you account for the fact that his arm is on a hinge?
Is what? Say again?
Did you account for the fact in this scenario that you just told the jurors that his arm is on a hinge?
On a
Called
hinge.
Shoulder?
Okay.
Okay, so the arm got hit. Didn't his arm just swing?
I mean, that's what you would think, right? His arm wouldn't just stay still and be struck by the car. It would swing backwards or forwards, depending on whatever way he was facing.
I said arm and shoulder area, so his arm could have been considered part of it.
Even if his shoulder got the upper,
Okay.
pointing to his upper biceps. Right? There's no injuries on his shoulder, not a single one, not even a bruise, right?
Like I said, it looked like to me it was from up here. I don't know how far I can up back here, but it was up here.
Well,
So
you're the one that talked about his injuries on his arm.
yes.
That's limited to about mid biceps, to about mid forearm, correct?
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
No injuries on the shoulder, no injuries on the torso, no injuries on the ribs, no injuries on the back, correct? Is that right?
Yes.
So your theory is you got hit on the arm, took the brunt of the force from the taillight on the arm, stayed with the vehicle long enough for the taillight to explode, basically, to shatter. Then these striations get on his arm, these abrasions. Does a pirouette, a spin, counterclockwise, and flies 30 feet in the air to his point of rest.
Yeah, it happened probably a little faster than that, though.
It probably happened faster than that. What the hell kind of answer is that?
I thought you said he hit his head on the curb.
I said that's one of the possibilities of when you look at the roadway, as he gets spun around kind of clockwise, it's a possibility that the curb is there, any blunt force object on the ground, as the ground is pretty blunt.
Well, except in your scenario that you just told us, you flew through the air onto the light dusting of snow, grass, and dirt.
I didn't say through the air.
This man doesn't even have a basic understanding of physics. I mean, just picture a baseball hitting a baseball bat, right? Once it's hit, it immediately starts to change direction from where it was coming from. And that's a moving object hitting another moving object. He says that he would have been projected forward. So how, if he was projected in some way after he spun, how did he have time to hit his head on the curb? That doesn't even make sense. How would he make contact with the road and hit his head on the side of the road? That would mean, because his final resting place was about 10 feet into the front lawn, that would mean he would have had to hit his head on the curb and then bounce 10 feet into the lawn. It just doesn't make sense. This guy's whole theory just doesn't make a lick of sense. He would have immediately flew when he got hit. Like, that's how this works. If you hit something, it would immediately fly. It wouldn't stay stationary, fall backwards, and then fly. It would just fly.
Say that again.
I didn't say he got thrown through the air.
Okay, I'll use your word. He got projected. Like
Projected doesn't mean it's not incorporating just throw. Projected just means you get pushed forward. There's two parts of that. There's the air, then there's the ground. Like I said earlier, the tumbling, the rolling, whatever that part of the crash would happen. Projecting is just what we call what happens to a pedestrian post-impact with a crash.
Okay, so a couple questions. If his arm, elbow took the brunt of that entire impact, how do you account for the fact that he didn't suffer a broken bone?
I don't know.
How do you account for the fact that he didn't have a fracture?
Objection.
Sustained.
How do you account for the fact that he didn't even have a bruise on the arm?
Objection.
That's sustained too.
Your approach.
Yes.
Keith's injuries do not look anything like an automobile pedestrian accident, do they?
Yes, they do.
Isn't it true, Trooper Paul, you came to these opinions and conclusions because Trooper Proctor told you to come to these opinions and conclusions in furtherance of his investigation?
That is not true.
That's why you have these opinions and conclusions that just don't make sense, correct?
That is not true.
And so with all of that, going back to Profiling Evil's video, I'm just kind of dumbfounded because I'm looking in his comment section and there's people in his comment section thanking him for doing such an outstanding job. And I'm wondering to myself, did these people not watch the first trial? Or, I mean, they haven't yet brought in accident reconstructionists and all that in the second trial, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that, you know, it's going to be the same theory because you can't really change your theory in the middle of the trial. So, what are these people talking about? His information that he's basing his whole entire opinion on in his video isn't even the correct information. That's not what they're saying happened. Now, his theory is plausible if that's actually what happened, but it's not. Karen Reed was not doing a 3-point turn, and that's not how this all happened. So his theory is kind of incorrect because it's based on the wrong information. And I don't know this guy, but he's got a pretty big following. And, you know, I feel like it's just kind of irresponsible to be putting out a theory like this and having all these people commenting on it, thinking that, wow, you did such a great job when you're basing your theory off of incorrect, inaccurate information. You know, there's better police officers out there that you could be watching and that are doing a way better job of covering this case and actually getting the information correct. Even if this information was pretty accurate and, you know, she was doing a 3-point turn and backed into him like he says happened, which is not what happened, it's still kind of crazy because how do you go 24 miles per hour doing a turn in the middle of the street that's only 27 feet wide? It just doesn't even make sense. How would you be able to accelerate that much? Your car is 16 feet long. It takes up almost more than half the street. And then you somehow could get from 0 to 24 and not hit the curb or end up in the middle of the lawn. I mean, unless her tires got stuck and they were spinning out and then she, you know, finally got traction. But even then, still doesn't really make sense. She definitely would have hit more than just John. So, yeah, this is pretty bad. And this is now the second video I've watched of his where he's shared completely inaccurate information on the case and based his theory off of it.